Welcome to this WiseL tutorial. In this session, we're going to teach you how to create a dynamic matrix or a pivot table in SQL Server reporting services. What you'll cover in this session are all the steps needed to create a dynamic matrix. We'll start with an explanation of what a dynamic matrix is and why you might want to create one. We'll talk you through creating the dataset required, how to set up the parameters which gives your user the choice for which fields they'd like to display, and then how you can add the matrix to the report. Once we've covered the basics, we'll move on to all the areas where you'll need to use expressions. So we'll show you how to create the group fields and make those dynamic, how to choose an expression for the data fields, adding row and column labels using expressions, making the sorting of your matrix dynamic as well, and finally, as a sort of final flourish, we'll show you how you can make the data field function dynamic as well. So lots to do, let's get started. In a previous video, we've shown you how to create a basic matrix in reporting services, and here's a quick reminder of what one of those looks like. You can choose to group by a row field, here it's the studio name, and also by a column field, here it's the film certificate, and then in the central area you can choose to show some form of aggregate statistic, so here is the average of the film length. The only downside to this type of matrix is that it's quite static. If I want to change the group fields or the statistic, I have to go back and change the design of my report. We're going to solve that problem by showing you in this video how to create a dynamic matrix. And the idea here, hopefully as you can see, is that we've used parameters to allow the user to set up each matrix exactly how they want it. So if I decide to choose to group by a different row field, for example, and choose a different data field, and even choose a completely different function to apply, when I view the report again, my matrix will update to show me all of my new choices. So that's what we're going to create today. So to start building our dynamic matrix, we've created a blank report and created a simple data source which connects to our movies database. The next step is to create a data set, which includes all of the possible information you might want to see in the resulting matrix. So I'm going to right-click the datasets folder and choose to add a new one. And I'm going to change the name to DTS Film Data. Choose to use an embedded dataset in this example. Connect to my data source movies. And then, because I'm including information from lots of different tables, by far and away the easiest way to do this is to use the query designer. Next, I need to choose which tables I'd like to include in the dataset. So to do that, I can click the Add Table button and then select the tables I want to use. I'm going to include the certificate table, country, director, and studio. Now these tables that I've included here will all form the choices for my row and column groups in the matrix. The final table I'm going to include is the film table, and that's going to include all of the fields that I'll use in the data area, so for the averages and sums, etc. So I can close down the Add Table window now, and all I need to do, if I can manage it with this slightly messy view, is to select the various fields. So I'd like to be able to see the certificate, the country name, the director name, I'll scroll down a little, also the studio name. Now those will all be the, as I said, the row and column group choices. For the statistical information for the data areas, I'm going to include some fields from my film table. I'll include the film runtime minutes, maybe the budget and box office takings, and maybe the Oscar nominations and Oscar wins. Now that I've done all that, I can click OK again, and my dataset is now created. The next stage is to create some parameters which the user can use to choose which row, column, and data fields they want to see. So let's start by creating a row field parameter. I'll right-click the parameters folder and choose to add a new parameter. And I'll change the name of this one to be called PRM row field. The prompt is what the user will see, so I'll type in something slightly more descriptive, I guess, with a space row field. The data type of this parameter will be text. And what I'd like to do is give the user the choice of the certificate, country, director, or studio fields. So to do that, I'm going to go to the Available Values tab and specify some values. I'll add the first one. There's a label and a value for each parameter. So for the first one, the values will actually be the same, certificate and certificate. for the label and the value. If I click Add again, the next value I'd like to see is the country. Now, for the label, I'm going to type in just the word country, and that's what the user will see in the drop-down list. But for the value, I have to make sure that this is set to the same as the name of the field. This is very important because of the way our dynamic matrix will work. It relies on the names of the fields being the ones that are selected in the parameters. Let's just quickly add two more so we can go for the same approach for the director. That will be what the user will see, but the field name is called director name, which is there. And one final one, and that will be studio and studio name. And there we go. Those are the values I'd like to select for that parameter. If I click OK, and then I'll quickly create the column field parameter as well, because it will have exactly the same values. So let's create this one, PRM column field, and then the prompt will be column field, and then it will be text again, and then the available values, I'll specify my values and quickly type in certificate. And the field name is also called certificate. Oops. And then I can add another value. This will be the country, but the field name is called country name. I can add director, and this will be director name. And then finally, studio and studio name. And those are my row and column field groups created. Now I can use a similar approach to give the user the choice for which data field they'd like to display. So I can right-click the parameters folder again and choose to add a parameter. This one will be called PRM data field, and the prompt will be called data field. It will be text again, and heading to the available values tab to give the user the choice for which values they can select. So it's a similar approach. The label will be something descriptive that the user will see, and then the value will be the exact name of the field that we'd like to use in the matrix. So that's film runtime minutes for this example. I'll add another couple as well. So let's have budget, and that will be film budget dollars. So at this point I wish I'd chosen slightly shorter field names, but never mind. We can have box office, and that will be film box office dollars. And maybe I'll just add one more. I'll add the film Oscar wins. So Oscar wins, and that will be film Oscar wins. And there we go. If I click OK and then preview my report, just to show that the three drop-down lists should be working, I can choose a field for the row, I'm going to choose studio, I can choose a field for the column, and I can choose a field for the data area. Nothing will happen if I click View Report because my report doesn't actually have any data in it yet, but we've got the choices set up. Now we're ready for the difficult bit. So the next stage is to create a matrix in the report and make sure that its row and column and data fields are set based on the values selected in these parameters. So let's go back to the design view, and I can simply double click on the matrix tool in the toolbox to add one to my report. Nice and simple. And what I'm going to focus on now are setting the row and column groups properly. So I'm going to do that in the Groups panel down at the bottom of the screen. Let's start with the row group expression. I'm going to right-click on the row group in the Groups panel, and I'm going to choose to view the group properties. On the dialog box that appears, I need to make sure I'm on the General tab and looking in the Group Expressions section over here. My matrix isn't grouped on anything yet, so I'm going to use the Expression Builder to choose which field it is grouped by. Now, this whole example relies on knowing that there is more than one way to refer to a field in reporting services. Usually, when you refer to fields in the Expression Builder, you use this syntax, fields, and I might say director name dot value. And that would be a standard way to refer to a particular field. It's underlined in red because my matrix isn't actually connected to a dataset yet. Now that syntax is no good for us. What we need to do is convert this syntax into one that can accept a piece of text from our parameter. So another way to refer to that exact same field would be to say fields, open brackets, and then inside a set of double quotes, the name of the field we want to refer to, followed by dot value. Now that we know we can do that, this literal string of text here can be provided from anywhere in our report. We could refer to another field, we could refer to another value somewhere else. What we're going to do is refer to the value of one of our parameters. So I'm going to replace this literal string here, I'm going to take that away, and inside the round brackets I'm going to refer to the value of my row field parameter. I can do that by double-clicking the row field parameter here. So that will type in parameters exclamation PRM row field dot value. So if I select the director field, it will feed in director name. If I select certificate, it would feed in the word certificate, etc. I'm going to click OK here. Then I'm going to use exactly the same trick to set the column group as well. So I can right-click on the column group in the Groups panel, choose Group Properties, and I'm going to click on the Expression Builder for the group on Expression. I'll start by typing in the word Fields, open a set of round brackets, and at this point I'll go to the Parameters category and double-click the Column field parameter. I can then close the round brackets, type in a full stop, and refer to the value property. Click OK, and click OK again, and we've set up the groups for our rows and columns. So the final step, in order to see at least some information come out in the matrix, is to set the expression for the data field. So we can do that by right-clicking on the text box in the matrix itself and choosing to view the expression builder again. Now in this example we're going to use exactly the same technique as we did with our row and column groups. So we're going to refer to the fields collection, and in a set of round brackets we're going to refer to the data field parameter, so the parameters category, double click the data field parameter, close the round brackets, and then refer to the dot value of the field. Now that would return the value of the data field that we've chosen. What we want to do is pass that into some sort of aggregate function. We might want to use sum or average, min, max, etc. Just as a quick simple example, we're going to use the AVG, the average function. Now that will calculate the average of whichever field we've chosen in the data parameter. I'm going to click OK at this point, and it is going to look quite basic and a bit rough and ready, but it's enough now to see that the dynamic fields are working. If I preview the report, what we can do is select Studio field perhaps for the rows, certificate perhaps for the columns, and then maybe I'll find the average of the running time in minutes. When I view the report, as I say, it's going to look a little bit rough and ready, but it's enough to see that we are definitely getting values out in the results. If I change the data field that I'm displaying, maybe I'll view the Oscar wins, we'll see a completely different set of numbers, and likewise, if we choose different fields for the rows and columns, we should see that those also change the number of rows and columns that we see. Obviously there's a lot of work to do now with tidying things up, so let's get started by adding some appropriate labels so we can actually see what we're looking at. Adding labels to the matrix uses again exactly the same technique as we've used in all of the other parts. We're going to set an expression which refers to the field referred to by each of our parameters. So back to the design view, and I'm going to set the expression for the row field label first of all. So I'm going to right click the rows group and I'm going to set an expression. I'm going to make this equal to fields, open brackets, parameters, row field, close brackets, dot value. If I click OK, and then I'll do the same for the columns, right click columns, choose expression, equals fields, open brackets, parameters, double click column field, close brackets, dot value, and then click OK again. If I preview the report, add a couple of values, let's go for studio and certificate and a data field, and we should find now that we actually see labels come out sensibly. It's unfortunate that they're not sorted in any particular order. So what we can do is add a sorting level to our row groups and perhaps our column groups as well, using again exactly the same technique. So to add a dynamic sorting level to my matrix, I need to go again back to the design view, and the sorting for a matrix is dealt with in the groups panel again. So let's deal with the row groups first of all. If I right click the row group and choose to view its properties, I can head to the sorting tab, and I can see at the moment that there are no sorting levels added. So I'm going to add a new sorting level, and once again use the expression builder to refer to my parameter. So I'm going to type in fields, open brackets, go to the parameters category, and I want to sort by the row field, close the brackets, and then say dot value again. If I choose OK and choose OK, preview the report one more time. I'll choose, let's go for Studio first of all, and any value will do. And I should be able to see this time that the column, the row groups are sorted alphabetically by Studio. If I change that, let's choose Director and view reports. This time they should be grouped alphabetically by Director. So dynamic labels and dynamic sorting. So we've got our matrix behaving fairly dynamically at this point. We can choose a different row group, different column group, and a different field to find the average of. The one thing that we're lacking though is the choice for which function we apply to the data field we've selected. In a proper pivot table you can choose sum, average, min, max, count, etc. And I'd like to give our users that exact same choice. So to do that, first of all we need to create a new parameter which lets the user choose which function to apply. To do that, I'm going to head back to the design view, and then I'm going to right click the parameters folder and choose to add a new parameter. I'll call this one PRM function, and then I'll change the prompt to just the word function. The data type will be text again, and then the available values is where I can set which functions the user can select from. So I'm going to specify some values, and I'm going to add. Now again, just as we did with our other parameters, we can choose to display a more descriptive label. So I'm going to choose to show the label of total, and then the value, I'll use the word sum. It's not actually that important in this example to make sure that these are exact function names. We're going to write a switch function later which tests the value selected, so this does not have to be the name of an existing function, just as long as you can remember what it is. So I'm going to add another function. I'm going to change that to the word average, and I'm going to change the value to the three letters AVG, and then add another one, and I can go for highest, and I can say that's max, and then one more, that will be lowest, and I'll set that to be the word min. So that's my parameter created. If I click OK, what I now need to do is change the expression which calculates the aggregate for the entire matrix. To do that, I'm going to right click on the expression for the data field and choose to view the expression. And at the moment it's set to be the average of whatever field I've chosen for the data field. Now what I'm going to do is use the switch function to make this conditional. So if you can't remember the syntax of the switch function, you can always find it in the common functions category and in the program flow section. And if I look at the switch function there, the examples show me that I can test a single condition and then provide an answer if that condition is met. And then I can test another condition and provide a different answer if that condition is met. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the word switch into the top of my, my expression builder, and then I'm going to add an open round bracket below that, and then right down at the bottom I'm going to add another closed round bracket. And in between these brackets, in between these two lines, I'm going to add in all the various conditions and functions that I'd like to perform. As I've already got the function which calculates the average of my selected data fields, let's deal with that one first. So I'm going to indent this a couple of times. And what I need to do is check if the value of my function parameter, which I can enter by double-clicking, is equal to AVG. If I type in a comma after that, that will separate the two arguments, and there we go, there's the basic pair of arguments for a switch function. If this condition is true, so if I've chosen average for my function parameter, then I'll apply the average function, the AVG function, to the data field that I've selected in my data field parameter. The nice thing is that every other pair of arguments then for my switch function behaves in a very similar way. I can copy this entire line, hit enter, type in a comma at the start of the next one, and then paste that in. And I can simply modify the two little bits that I need to. So I can check if I've chosen the sum function. I want to apply the sum function. Enter again, comma, and paste it in. Max, max, and then max again. And I'm sure you get the idea by now. And one more time, just to deal with the min. And there we go. So it handles each of the four choices I've provided to my user and applies the appropriate function in each case. If I click OK and then preview my report one more time, let's go for the studio, the certificates, the running time, and rather than choosing the average, I'm going to go for the total. This time, when I view the report, there we go. If I choose a different function, I should get a completely different set of results. And there we go. So there we go, we've made every element of this matrix completely dynamic, giving the user complete flexibility in the way they view our data. The final thing I'm going to do is a bit of formatting just to make the whole report a lot more presentable. So I'm going to do all of this back in the design view. I'm first of all going to modify the number format for the results of my expression for the data field. So I'm going to right click and choose text box properties and head to the number tab, and I'm going to set a simple number format which uses a couple of decimal places and a 1000 separator, so a comma which separates each unit of thousands. Just as with all of the other elements of our matrix, we could even make this part, the number format, dynamic as well. If I click OK, just to show you how you could do that, in the Properties window, you can set, if you can find it, the number format. There we go. So the number section, here's the format. You're allowed to use an expression to calculate the number format, and you could, for example, show a currency format if you've chosen to view the box office takings and the budget, and so on. I'm sure you get the idea by now, but it's just another idea for you. I'm not going to do that in this example. I'm going to just add a few more bits of basic formatting. I'm going to widen this column. I'd like to have a sort of a report header which sits at the very top of my matrix, and I want to make that dynamic as well. So what I'm going to do is right click at the left hand side on the top row and choose to insert a new row which is outside of the group and above. In the new text box which appears, I'm going to right click and choose to view an expression, to choose to build an expression. I'm going to make this up or build up a sentence, concatenate a sentence based on the labels of my parameters. So I'd like it to show, if I've chosen the average of the film's running time, I'd like my report header to be average running time. So that means I need to group together or join together the values of two parameters. So first of all, the function parameter. Now I don't want to choose the value of this. Remember, the value is sum avg min max. What I really want to see is the label of my parameters. So that's total, average, highest, lowest, etc. I want to join that together with a space, so I can use an ampersand, and then inside a set of double quotes type in a space, and then another ampersand, and then I can choose the label or the value of my data field parameter. Again, rather than the value, what I really want to do is show the label, which is a little bit more descriptive and a little bit clearer to read. So I can click OK there. And then finally a bit of basic colouring in, which I can never resist doing. Sorry if this is a bit boring, but I can't resist. And nearly done. One more to go. And there we are. So if I preview the report one more time and choose a row field, a column field, a data field, and a function, finally we ought to see some nice, sensible, attractive almost looking results. If you've enjoyed this training video, you can find many more online training resources at www.wiseowl.co.uk.